Musa kicked her into the river. That is the only honest way to begin this account. Not with our mission, not with the ambush at the rubber tree line, not with how we found her wounded and disarmed beside the canal. Begin here, Musa, our unit commander, boot against her ribs, and she went over the bank and into the black water without a sound. No scream, no splash, you would remember. She simply disappeared into the current, and Musa turned back to us and said she was not worth a bullet. He said it the way a man says a thing he believes with his whole chest. Certain, finished, done. I was 17 meters upstream. I saw her go in. I was new enough that I did not argue. We had found her at dusk in the old plantation house beside the Eastern Canal, 2 kilometers from the river bend. She was American military, that much was clear from the kit, but her uniform carried no name, no rank, no unit patch, only a small strip of black fabric where a namitape would normally sit. She had taken a round through the left thigh, field-dressed with what she had in her cargo pouch. Pressure wrap, hemostatic gauze, an improvised cinch tourniquet. She had tightened herself. She was sitting upright against the wall when we came through the door. Not lying down, sitting, back straight, hands open on her knees, watching the door. No weapon within reach. We had that room covered from 3 angles, and still she did not look like someone who had accepted her situation. She looked like someone waiting for a calculation to complete. Musa told her to stand, and she stood. Not fast, not slow, just stood. Her injured leg carried her weight without drama. He circled her twice, looked at her kit, looked at her hands. Her hands were something a man noticed. The knuckles were scarred in a particular way, not bar fight scarred but work scarred, the kind that comes from years of weapons manipulation and obstacle work. She had a military watch on her left wrist with a cracked crystal, and on the underside of her forearm a small tattoo in black ink, a coordinate grid, and beneath it a depth marking. The kind of notation a person wears when they operate in water regularly. I saw it. Musa saw it. Neither of us asked what it meant. He took her medical kit, her radio, already smashed we noted, and her backup compass. He looked at her once more. He said she was not worth the noise a shot would make. Then he told 2 of our men to walk her to the bank. She did not resist. She walked on that injured leg across 40 meters of plantation floor and 20 meters of loose stone bank without being helped and without limping, in a way that asked for anything. At the edge, Musa nodded. She went in. That was the last I thought of her for 4 days. We moved upriver. Our purpose was to hold the collection point on the northern bend where supplies came through twice a week. There were 11 of us, 9 fighters, Musa, and a logistics man named Taraf who kept the radio and the ledger. We were not a small force. We had held that bend for 9 months. We knew the jungle there the way a person knows the rooms of his own house. On the 3rd night after we left her, Taraf did not come back from his watch rotation at the supply cache. We assumed he had run. It happened. Musa sent 2 men to check the cache and they found it untouched. Supplies still there, Taraf's radio still there, Taraf not there. No blood. No sign of struggle at the cache itself. What there was, 20 meters into the tree line on the western side, was a single boot print in the soft mud beside the root system of a fig tree. The print was small, narrow heel, deep ball of foot impression. Someone who moved with weight forward, on the run or trained to move silently on the front of the foot. Musa looked at the print. He said it was an animal. He said Taraf had run. I looked at that print for a long time before I followed the others back to camp. On the 4th night, 2 of our best fighters, the brothers Qasim and Dahir, who had been with Musa since the beginning, did not return from a river patrol. They had been moving the southern channel, 2 kilometers of cleared water, a route they knew cold. Nothing on that route should have stopped them. When we went looking at first light, we found Qasim's radio in a hollow log 15 meters from the battery removed and placed neatly beside it. Dahir's pack was in the water, wedged against a root, emptied of everything useful, no other sign of either man. Musa posted double watch. He called it a river unit. Some other faction moving through, he said, picking off stragglers. He was not afraid yet, but I could see him counting. I was afraid. I had been afraid since the boot print. She had been in that river for 4 days. She had a tourniquet wound in her thigh. She had no weapon, no radio, no compass, no medical resupply. And something was moving through our position like water through stone, patient, directional, and without noise. On the 5th night I was on the eastern watch post, the one overlooking the canal approach, when I heard nothing. That is the correct way to say it. I heard the jungle go quiet in a band about 60 meters wide, moving from south to north along the tree line. Animals do not go quiet in a band. Wind goes quiet all at once. This was directional. It moved. I keyed my radio to warn Musa, and the radio gave back a dead click. The battery had not been dead an hour before. I stayed at my post because I did not know what else to do. 13 minutes later, I counted. I heard Musa shout once from the main position. One shout. Then a sound I could not identify, then nothing. I moved toward the main position in the dark, low and slow, the way you move when you are not sure you want to arrive. What I found when I got there stopped me at the tree line. 4 of our men were restrained, flex cuffed to the supply rack with their own equipment. Seated on the ground, alive and unhurt, rifles stacked 10 meters away. A 5th man was face down in the dirt, wrists bound, and making the specific kind of sound a man makes when a joint has been locked past its comfortable range. Musa was standing. He was standing at the center of the camp, hands raised to shoulder height, and he was very still. In front of him, not close, perhaps 4 meters, was a figure in dark kit, face painted, standing with the complete and unambiguous posture of someone who has already decided every question in the room. She held a rifle that had been Dahir's. Her injured leg did not shake. She was not breathing hard. She looked at Musa the way a person looks at something they calculated 4 days ago and are now simply confirming. He recognized her. I saw it happen across his face. The moment he placed her, the moment the certainty that she was not worth a bullet reorganized itself into something else entirely. He tried to speak. She said one word in English, flat and quiet, and whatever he had been about to say did not come out. The word was kneel. He knelt. Musa, who had commanded that bend for 9 months, who had sent a wounded woman into a night river with contempt on his face. He went to his knees on the dirt floor of his own camp without a second word, because the alternative was written clearly in her posture, and he was a man intelligent enough to read it. She zip-tied his wrists herself, one-handed, precise, the way a person does a thing they have done several thousand times. Then she stepped back and spoke into a radio on her chest rig, a radio that had not been there 4 days ago, which meant she had taken it from someone, which meant she had been solving problems in that jungle every hour of every one of those 4 days while we went about our business believing she was gone. Within 20 minutes there were helicopters on the riverbank. I was not restrained. I had not moved. She had seen me at the tree line the moment I arrived. I understood that later. She had simply made a decision about me and filed it away and returned her attention to Musa. When the extraction team came in, she spoke to their officer briefly, and the officer looked at me, and then the officer looked back at her, and she said something I did not hear, and he nodded. They left me standing there. She walked past me toward the river. She did not look at me. She did not need to. What I know now, because the papers eventually made their way to people who showed them to me, is that she had been in the water for less than 40 minutes before she made the bank 2 kilometers downstream. She had moved through our position for 4 days with a dressed wound, no weapon, and no supply, methodically removing our capability using only what she found and what she knew. The file the Americans released much later, heavily redacted, classification markings still visible in the margins, described her as a Tier 1 direct action specialist with a particular background in riverine, infiltration and isolated personnel recovery. Her call sign, listed once in the margin of the 3rd page, was Revenant. Musa was processed and transferred. He said very little after the night at the camp. A man who has knelt in the dirt of his own position tends to keep certain memories close. I have kept mine the same way, not as a wound, but as a correction. She went into that river because we assumed the river would finish what we would not. What came back out of it was not finished. It was only more certain of what it had come to do.